Sorry, the camera froze up on me there, but I was saying that even going to some Roman Catholic cathedrals in Notre Dame, I've had the privilege of being there twice now in Paris, and the big stained glass windows kind of telling an overall story in various panels, various vignettes. And if you go in an Eastern Orthodox church, you'll still see that today. Paintings of Jesus, of Mary, of the various saints, and and so forth. Different panels working together to kind of tell an overall story, or perhaps to create an overall sort of experience. If you look at these iconic paintings, proportion is not necessarily considered. The Renaissance had no effect over the use of proportion, so sometimes an angel looks massive flying over the church, or sometimes a person looks massive and the horse looks small, whatever the style is there. Proportion is not necessarily a big aspect of the style. It's more or less about the person, or about the moment that is being captured there. The film, in that sense, is iconic. Not that proportion is out, but if you will, proportion of the storytelling isn't necessarily part of the narrative. And in fact, the movie's called Andrei Rublev, but he's not in it all the way through the movie. There are times when he kind of just disappears. He's not on the scene. The opening sequence with the gentleman flying up in the hot air balloon, it's dreamy. We get to see him flying. It seems so wonderful. And then, of course, he crashes. That has no connection with the rest of the movie. But it's trying to pull us in, isn't it? It's trying to capture us a little bit about what's going on here. A lot of the shots are very long and meditative. They're very wide sequences. Sometimes they're wide because there's a lot of action going on during the raid when the Tatars are coming in, and there's a lot of action going on in the shot. But then sometimes there's just maybe one or two people in the shot, but it's trying to capture the environment that these people are in. The takes are very long, sometimes 2-3 minutes. It's an entire shot, a sequence, people talking, action going on. There's not a lot of editing happening here as in Eisenstein's style of montage editing. This is very much trying to put us in to that environment and into that world, pull us into that world. So in that sense, it is very episodic. It is an epic in that regard. I want you to really look at when you watch this movie, because you could get bored because it's a different language, a different culture, even a different religion than most of us understand. But watch each scene and try to enjoy or appreciate the time that went into create it. Early on, there's a moment when the three monks are walking in a semi-wooded area, and then it begins to rain. It starts to rain all over the place. They had to coordinate rain machines. They had to coordinate the monks and where they were walking and how that was going to work. The scaffolding in the cathedrals, as you have these nice long takes and you go through these sets that look like giant cathedrals and with scaffolding built into it. That didn't happen by accident. Even the pagan ritual with people walking with torches, where they're walking, how some walk past the camera in the foreground, how some are way off in the background, and how they all are heading down towards the river, and Rublev catches this moment and he walks into it. There was a lot of coordination that went on in that. And particularly, as I said a moment ago, the raid sequence, the horses, the soldiers, the town people, the fires, the death, all of this action happening often in a very wide, long take. That took hours, that took days to coordinate, and it took a lot of vision for Tarkovsky to be able to create this overall vision. So look at all these details. This is not just an old black and white movie that has no thought in it. Rublev was painting for us. He was creating a world for us. He was drawing us in to the amount of detail that he put into it. And so on a visual level, I think that's pretty compelling for you to look at. Let me see here, a couple of my final notes here. We talked a little bit about Eisenstein already, but I encourage you to look at the details. Look at what's happening in the background. Even in that early moment I talked about with the monks, after they go into the jester scene and they're walking away, there's way off in the background Tartar soldiers riding their horses way off into the background there. Perhaps that alludes of scenes to come, but there's a lot going on in the background. The monks are about in the midground, as there's a little bit of, I think, trees or bushes in the foreground. It's creating a world, it's creating an environment that pulls us in And we begin to think about it. We begin to wonder and ponder, how long did this take to create? This is not an accident. There is a lot of thought, there's theory, and there's a desire even to pull people into it. To wrap up here, Tarkovsky's theory and philosophy, Dalvecchi said that he wanted to develop a cinema, this is on page 140, that will function like a religious icon, with the power to bring God back among us and restore our faith in the inexplicable and the supernatural. Of course, it wraps up with the iconic paintings at the end so we can appreciate them to a certain degree. Perhaps Tarkovsky wanted to mesmerize us with what he thought was a truthful statement about Russian Christian history. And let's not forget that. We were people that were Christian at one time. So maybe there's an historical element there. Perhaps Tarkovsky wanted to remind his people about this very unique heritage in face of the atheistic communism that was going on. Perhaps Tarkovsky was simply an artist who tapped into a style that had power, that had a tradition, and he knew that if he used this style, he would himself would develop a very unique visual statement of his own, regardless of what his overall purpose was here. I think we can see that the vision was epic in nature and was inviting us to come into a world that we're not familiar with, but that we can get lost in for a time. And I think Dalvecchi develops this a little bit more as you read it for you to understand. But I hope this kind of sets a little bit of a background for you of this style, of who Tarkovsky is, what he was trying to do. And I know it's a long movie, so I don't have any other videos for you to watch. This is it, lecture-wise. Make sure that you have considered a film for your term paper, that you have kind of a direction. Let me give you an example. A student sent me this one, and I think this works. She is going to do Alice in Wonderland, the most recent one by Tim Burton. And what she's going to look at is the use of color by Tim Burton, the director, in that film. And then I challenged her to then try to find a genre of art. For example, we were talking about iconic art. I don't think that'll work. Tim Burton's very much into Gothic sort of art, so perhaps you can go back and look at that. So look at a certain genre, even as we looked at in American in Paris, some of the early, some French impressionistic painters, or a particular artist in style. For example, Jackson Pollock with the American in Paris. So I hope that kind of helps you see. If you choose Dumb and Dumber, you might be a little hard-pressed. There's not a lot going on there. I love the movie. It makes me laugh. But I don't know visually if that's a strong enough film. But a movie like Alice in Wonderland has a lot going on visually. So picking that movie and then looking at maybe color and set design and how that relates to a particular genre and how Burton uses that to weave together a compelling visual story that taps into our emotions. That's kind of what I'm looking for there. So I hope that helps you in that regards. And if you have any questions, please email me. I do try to get back to you as soon as possible. And please stay on top of your work. I am going to strive to get on top of my work and grading. I think I've graded all of week 1, part of week 2, and hopefully we'll be able to finish week 3, and well, probably won't get 4 done this week. Come next week. But nonetheless, we're pulling this all together, and I thank you for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.